Greetings to all audiences and Solsborne style enthusiasts. You may be asking yourself the video headline, why? Why would anyone in the midst of the mass of fascinating games released last year, and so many games coming out this year, turn their head and look back? In an era of great games like Marvel's Spider-Man 2, Alan Wake 2, and so on, that have been released in the last few months, to free games with in-app payments that entertain millions of people daily, and even newly released hyped Solsborne-style games like Lords of the Fallen and Lies of P are many works to experience have. Why should the player go back to the past and turn his back on this huge tumult and flood? The answer to these questions is valuable. Dark Souls 2 is a canvas, and an artistic vision should be taken to send a wave of emotions to someone who patiently sits on his feet. The Dark Souls 2 is so great and content that if one wishes to say it badly, it can count a lot of things and its strengths are innumerable. After seeing the first chapter of the video, I have no doubt most of you companions wonder, has the author lost his mind? Tranquility and Dark Souls. Friends, relax. I've said many times that gaming is art, and this work of art needs to be looked at. This is the food of your soul. When you stand at the window and watch a snowy scene, only the cold comes to your mind. But what if I say open the window, contrary to what your mind says, and a gentle breeze touches your face and caress you? When you hear the name Dark Souls, the first thing that will deafen your ears like a bell is the difficulty of playing. You can't think of anything else in the first mental encounter with this series other than its difficulty. The inability of your character, the excessive power of the bosses, the presence of your surroundings, and hundreds of other causes all make you disagree that you can find peace in Dark Souls 2. But I'm the one who came to tell you not to pay attention to the snowy weather and open the window without fear, because a breeze is going to cheer you up. It is said by elders that if there were only beauty, man would lose the ability to see and understand it better. To understand beauty, there must be ugliness. To better understand happiness, the bitter taste of sadness must be tasted. When you reach a plain full of beautiful flowers, you will stare for a while and begin to admire this beautiful landscape, and after a while you will leave the environment and forget about that glory. But if you find a beautiful flower in a dry desert full of thorns, that's where you rush to the flower, pick it up and try to have it as a sign, and remember this moment forever. There are a lot of examples to learn, but I'm going to get to the point so that I don't waste more time for your loved ones. It's true that Dark Souls has its own hardships, and in the game you are facing a brutal environment that everything is against you and intends to kill you, to the extent that even many gamers call this version the toughest Dark Souls. But all this makes it possible until you reach the bonfire and turn it on. The sound of a specific fire lighting inside this game will become a symbol of your peace, and if you hear this sound anywhere else, even years after playing the game, you hear a limitless sense of calmness, security, comfort, and hundreds of other good feelings come back to you and feel them wholeheartedly. Of all the Dark Souls, the safest place with the greatest sense of calm for me is Majula. After much suffering and hardship, seeing a female character staring at the horizon and even waiting for you is one of the most heartfelt emotions. Suppose that you will return to Majula after a hard battle with all kinds of enemies, the safest place in the world, where you stand on a high cliff and watch the waves of the sea in front of you, listening to a very strange and magical music that brings special peace of mind is playing. Is a feeling I can't express with words except to suggest that you play this game so that your soul can taste it. I think there's nothing more exciting in the world to go into a land without any prior recognition. Then wherever you go and find out how many strange things have happened in the past that we don't know about. Among the fans of the Dark Souls series, there is always disagreement, an endless controversy over the best version, and I don't intend to call the second version the best in this series. But this version has many memorable places that after the full experience of the game is impossible to forget and will be remembered for many years. I'm going to give you an example that I'm going to use again in the next part of the video. Imagine a deep well where each person would drink a certain amount of water. Someone might have a glass, someone maybe a bowl, and someone with a bucket might extract as much water from this well and drink and enjoy it. Dark Souls 2 rulings of that deep well, the amount of which is used by each player is different. In the beginning of the game, you are told that you have entered this land like thousands of other people, and you cannot overcome the curse that overshadows everyone, and a group of old women laugh at you. Then you enter a land whose glory has passed for many years, and only its ruins remain. Whether or not to discover this land and its various regions is up to you. But if you put dialogues and in-game notes and secret points together like puzzle pieces, and you discover one of the hundreds of secrets, you'll be filled with enthusiasm and your passion for exploring it will multiply. This is the formula for all of Miyazaki's works, but since Dark Souls The Tros was directed by Mr. Tomohiro Shibuya, it gives the audience another mood that is very enjoyable to experience. Also, the game environment is very wide, and the player in the game sees different places, each of which includes a very specific design. It can be said that there are a total of 36 locations within the game, along with 32 boss, each of which is very extensive and includes NPC and mystery, which is very enjoyable to explore, and adventure within environments. The variety of environments is so great that they can't be forgotten even after the game is over. From a castle that boils underground and is melting and collapsing due to the heavy weight of molten materials, to the foggy jungle, to the poisonous caves, and the dreaded black holes, and the mountain of dragons, and so on. I'll give you a few examples of game discoveries to get you interested in this game. If you've played Dark Souls 1, you'll be aware of the fact that in order to perform fast travel, you have a difficulty and get the Lord Vessel before you can travel through the fires. But in Dark Souls 2, you can use fast travel from the very beginning of the game, without any trouble in the environment. That's because you'll find many pieces of Lord Vessel on the ground inside the module. It seems that other people, to make their journeys easier, have turned it into many pieces and put a piece in each bonfire. In the early moments of your acquaintance with Dark Souls 2 cutscene in the lake, when the torch is lit and the camera rises from the water, the image of reality and its reflection does not match the water. What is going on and what is up to you? You can simply not notice or attention to it. But finding and understanding the face is one of the most fascinating ways to enjoy the Dark Souls series. The on-water image of the past of the upper environment, one of the locations of the game. The same castle that becomes so big and heavy that it sinks into the ground and is being swallowed by the molten material. During the Dark Souls 2 experience, you'll come to a place underground, very dark and mysterious, like a huge cemetery in a dungeon. The nature and cause of the creation of the place is the king's command. After many but fruitless attempts to cure the curse and increase the curse of immortality, and turn them into soulless bodies, the king orders them all to be rounded up and buried in a cemetery underground, so that they are quarantined in some way, with no light there. Years after this, you will find King Von Drake himself in a state of soullessness. Before the entrance to the king's room, you will encounter Velstad, one of the boss in the game. You will find him kneeling on the floor before the king's room and staring at the ceiling. After defeating him, you see a white circle where he was kneeling. The light from the ceiling is as bright as his body. If you don't kill enemies before the hall, they will follow you. But if you stand in white light, they will return to their former places because the immortals escape the light, so the lowest part of the ground was built to quarantine them and buried alive. But it seems that the king's guard, after his soullessness, has not abandoned him and even accompanied him to the underground graveyard, and is still faithful, even though after all these years he still remains human and has created a light line for himself to remind himself that he is still human. It is sad that we have to kill him for our personal ends. The only thing that was left for him was light. Such small but tragic stories are very bitter and make the Dark Souls series a big deal. Even after years of playing this game, now that I am writing the fate of this night, I feel cold. Among the Dark Souls trilogy, the second edition has a more palpable story and a more defined meaning piece. As I said in the previous part, Dark Souls 2 is deep well that are up to you to enjoy. The story of the game has its own narrative, and if someone has not played the first and third version, it can be fully connected to the world of the second version. because the game takes place and time in a different place than other versions. Although the story of this land in the Dark Souls universe is 1 and 3 versions narratives, but in another place and time than those 2 versions. In short, the story of the game is that you, like thousands of other people, fell under a spell. To avoid being empty of soul like others, you go to the mainland, Drangleic. Being drawn towards this land is the nature of every person under a spell. Now, can you find a cure for the spell and stop it? Can you save yourself? What hardships must be endured to obtain freedom? The answers to these questions are the main story of Dark Souls 2, but what happened to this land and the characters within it is up to you. Friends, please explore the game. All the writings, even the most worthless manuscript of a useless item, can be a puzzle piece to solve your riddle until you discover something new. And there are so many mysteries in this land that lovers of this version are still discovering new information. For example, I want to tell you one of the interesting parts of the game's story, so if you'd like to discover it yourself, skip the next few seconds. From the scattered information of the game, you will find that the king's brother has not been seen and disappeared from time. And you will find a place like a laboratory belonging to him that is full of strange creatures. In one room, you'll find many monster bodies, and in one of the places you'll encounter the greatest dragon you've ever heard of. You can kill the dragon after talking to him. After killing him, the items you will get are the spirit of the giant and the bones of the dragon, and several other clues that all make you realize that the dragon was the brother of the king, who has been able to combine the bones of the dragon and the spirit of the giants with his own soul to transform himself into a dragon. He may have done so out of fear of the all-consuming spell so that his body would not be empty. Maybe he was hungry for power, but in between the words of that dragon, one word disturbs me. The dragon uses the word we and not me in the words of the dragon, which he has made by another person. This secret I have just told you is just one of hundreds of fascinating in-game story secrets that will make you feel enjoyable and indescribable when you discover it. Of course, there are people who only think about finishing the game and won't notice any of them. As I said before, how much you understand the game is up to you. Dark Souls 2 has a beautiful story, a sweet story that is exclusive to the Solsborne series. In any case, friends, if you have finished Dark Souls 2 purely for its brutal gameplay, or have not played it at all, I would like to give you this advice to go into the cold and hopeless world of Dark Souls 2 without despair, and try to save this land, even though everyone is telling of the hardship of the way and the invincibility of the spell. In the darkest of circumstances, a candle can also bring light.